Should I record now? When should I hit record?
I will count us down in 3, 2, 1, go. That didn't work. Damn it.
Okay, wait.
Welcome back to Poutine Politics, Canadian issues served with cheese curds. My name's Adam.
My name's Mike.
And, Mike, it is time for a ranty podcast.
A ranty podcast?
A ranty podcast.
I need a platform to rant on. You're going to give me a platform
Absolutely,
to rant
I'm going to
on.
give us a platform to rant on. Okay?
Like any of my podcast ideas aren't ranty as it is.
Well, I suppose, but, I figured I'd join in.
It takes 1 second for me to go to a rant. That's why I haven't done it yet.
Yeah. So the focus of this rant, because there is a bit of a focus to it. I mean, if we get off track a bit, that's fine, but there is a bit of a focus to it. The focus is politicizing a pandemic.
Politicizing a pandemic?
Yes.
Okay, if you want me to go rant in this, you're not going to get as much ranty as you might think, because unfortunately for you, anyone that's been politicizing on Facebook for me gets instantaneously unfollowed.
Okay, fair enough. I mean,
I don't care.
Okay.
Goodbye.
See, I manage our Twitter account for the most part, and I make posts. Thank you. I make some posts, and I make comments on other people's tweets and stuff like that. And I mean, I try to be relatively reasonable about things. I know that, as we've discussed, I do have a little bit more of a left-leaning bias, but I'm reasonable enough that I can see when, obviously someone that is more of the right side of the scale makes a reasonable, comment, right? Or it's like, okay, yeah, I understand that, and that's fine. And then I'll if I see people kind of railing against it, I'm like, no, this is why this person's right. This is why what they're saying makes sense.
Yeah, you have the approach that I have as far as leanings. Yes, I would rather see a right-wing idea for a lot of things. However, that's not to say that I can look at a left-wing idea and go, because it's left-wing, it's idiotic. Right. No, it's a difference of opinion. So let's say, let's use Canadian dairy farmers, for example.
Sure.
You may think supply management is a good idea, whereas I would disagree. But that's an opinion on the theory of supply management, as opposed to supply management is stupid and you need to never do that because it's socialist and you're going to bring in Russians.
Mm-hmm.
But completely different. Like, we're not talking the same ballgame, right?
Yep.
So that's where, if I find people doing things like that, they get unfollowed. And I have family members that are no longer followed because of that.
Oh, family members.
Oh, yes.
All right, then.
I'll say it this way. If you're subscribed to Ontario Proud, and not because you want to see what the heck their craziness is doing, but you actually promote the Ontario Proud,
fair enough. You've
been quickly unfollowed on my account.
Fair enough.
Or Canada Proud, or Alberta Proud, wherever the heck proud you want to be.
So here's my thought process, I guess, in regards to the whole politicizing a pandemic. Let's start with the easy one. Trump.
Don't look at Trump.
That is what not to do, okay? Like, seriously, that is what not to do. If you think that Donald Trump is doing a good job right now, just hand in your human badge and don't interact with anyone ever again.
Okay, here's the thing. And I understand the casual Trump supporter and the full Trump supporter. The casual Trump supporter is somebody like, well, yeah, Trump is bad for this reason, but he's not as bad as Hillary Clinton or some other Democrats that are a part of the same political mechanisms that are just going to create the same inequality, just in a different flavor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I can understand what you're saying. And then there's the people that are very right-wing, that it wouldn't matter what you said to them, they're not going to believe you. And I'm talking to person, not as peoples in general, because the population that believes Donald Trump is right is a bunch of morons. But as a person, I understand why you would do that, because they are only hearing what they want to hear, and it's biased, right?
And this is where this is kind of where I start, and it's the low-hanging fruit of the politicizing a pandemic, because it's exactly what's going on in the States, right? I mean, they were there was more fighting about their stimulus bill than there was here in Canada. I'm going to get to what we were doing in Canada, but I think it took 3 days for the stimulus bill to get through the Senate in the States. Meanwhile, we had our stimulus bill like from the time first reading started until it got through the Senate and received royal assent was less than 48 hours.
Yeah.
There still has to go through the House of Representatives, or still had to, right? I think it has now.
Now, with the states, part of the problems is that you get them trying to pass a bill for stimulus package, and how they do their system is so messed up. But there's an anti-abortion part of the bill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just read about that, I think, last night.
Like,
pork barrels.
What is going on here?
Yeah, what does anti-abortion have to do with, trying to save the economy?
Yeah, and that's the problem with the U.S. system, is that you see this kind of thing happening time in and time again. Whereas the Canadian system, I mean, when you hear the reports like, okay, they sent the bare minimum amount of people to come do this. And has there been situations where we've had people wrongly politicizing the issue? Yeah, Scheer's been taking shots.
I'm going to get there.
But at the same point in time, you can be like, what were the Liberals thinking in trying to bring out special measures and making them have special powers for 9 months into 2021? Man, I've never seen a reversal so quickly in my life in politics.
Okay.
They brought it out at 5. It was off the table by 10.
So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about that part in particular because that is one of the things that the Conservatives are using as like a rallying cry to say we're doing what is best for Canadians, and we're preventing this power grab and things like that. So,
but it's already off the table.
Right. Well, okay. So exactly. And here's the issue I have with the way the Conservatives are playing this. The NDP to a lesser extent, but the Conservatives definitely, because they're like all over the media and they're all over social media about, wow, we stopped this Trudeau power grab and so on and so forth. It's like, okay, let's look at the steps here, and then let's also go to a relatively impartial party to the whole situation. The impartial party to this whole situation, well, relatively impartial, I guess. I mean, obviously they're politicians, and obviously they're responsible for the second largest province in Canada, is the Bloc Québécois. The draft legislation, like you said, it was like 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening on, was that Tuesday?
Whatever.
Monday. No, it was Monday. It was the 23rd, because it went into Parliament on the 24th, which was Tuesday, 24th of March. So they send out the draft legislation at 6 p.m. And you're right. By 10 o'clock, the clause in the draft legislation about the unlimited spending powers until December of 2021 was gone. So before it even got to the House, it was gone. While it seems underhanded, it's parliamentary procedure in that an economic update would go to the Finance Committee. Well, the Finance Committee is made up of members of every party. And the idea obviously is that, you hopefully get the input from the other parties, and you use that input. In a minority parliament situation, you kind of have to. In a majority parliament, you obviously don't. Case in point, Alberta passing a budget when all this stuff is going on. It went to through the proper stages before it got to the House of Commons. But the information was released to the media. And this is where I feel that the media did a bad job, because essentially all they were reporting was, the Liberals are trying to give themselves unlimited tax and spend power until the end of 2021. And so this is part of the problem that I have with, the Conservatives politicizing it and basically saying we've saved democracy for Canada by eliminating this unlimited powers part of the bill.
I would say that the Conservative reaction to it is very poor. But the idea that the Liberals get a pass is poor too.
I'm not giving them a pass. I'm not giving them a pass. I won't.
Because the idea that they can, there's emergency measures which got voted on, and they should always be voted on. Now, there is a time and a place for the PCs and any political party to make this a big issue. Now is not the time.
No.
It's not, because the Liberals backtracked, okay? But to say that the Liberals should never gone for it and they should be held accountable, but there's a time to hold them accountable. If the PCs are still politicizing this on like day 7, get a life. If you make a comment on it, they should, and they should take some points off of it, because the Liberal Party should never have done this in the first place. This is not something that should have gone. I'm always against, and this is my right wing coming out in full strides, I'm always against in getting power unlimitedly without checks and balances. Regardless, right? Like that's the reason why when the handgun thing where, let the RCMP dictate the laws. I'm like, no, I don't want the RCMP to do it. I'm not saying that they'll do a worse job. And I'm not saying the Liberals would do a worse job than the General House. That's not my point. My point is it should never be a situation where with my vote, I can't change the system, so to speak.
I suppose my issue in the grand scheme of things, in the way that it was handled, like, again, yeah, I don't want to give a political party unlimited powers either. But let's say the legislation had not been reviewed. So the draft had not been sent out before going to the House. And when first reading comes in the House, it's like that provision was still in there. It's a minority parliament. And it very well could have been struck down. Now, part of the reason why the bill took the time that it took to pass in the House as well was because there was negotiations in regards to, emergency measures when it comes to certain economic and budgetary items, and again, generally to do with healthcare. To say, maybe not everything that the ministry that Bill Morneau has to do through the finance ministry, that not necessarily everything has to go through the House of Commons to pass if it has to do with the healthcare system, which needs the money right now.
Circumventing some regulations is fine. See, this is where it gets tricky, but I mean, if it was negotiated on as a part of Parliament, that's one thing. Mm-hmm. See, the scary part is that if they had a majority government, yeah, you can ram through whatever you want to, but
if they'd had a majority, let's say, and they'd rammed through something like that, good luck winning the next election.
Yeah, but they're still in the same boat. Like, they still tried to do it. Regardless if they were successful or not, they still tried to do it. And that's the problem, right? Like, it doesn't matter if they were successful or not. You can't try that. And, people go like, well, they won't get in again. I'm like, depends on how people interpret it. If no one holds them accountable at all, then they get to get away with it scot-free. Well, that's not fair.
No.
And I mean, and like I said, and in my opinion, in this time of crisis, you get the one day of what the hell are you doing? Right? Like, I will give a politician 24 hours to react to a situation like that right now. Later, let's worry about that. But you get 24 hours to respond to something like this. Mm-hmm. Once it's been 24 hours, you need to refocus on what's important. Yep. Right? But I haven't seen the media on this. I'm sure it's been all kinds of whatever, but
well, I'd say in the grand scheme of things, the media has been more on the conservative side with this, where it is where they look at it as, it was a power grab.
But it was a power grab.
Well, I don't think it was. I really
know exactly what it was. Exactly what it was. If you're circumventing the government to do what you want, that's a power grab. I mean, it's not. It might be with the intention of benefiting people. I think
the point of it
still you're trying to get rid of the government's policies to do what you want with it. To do what you think's best.
I think the point of it being in there was to start a dialogue on it. I don't think it was there. I don't think it was there with the government's intention to say, yes, we're going to pass it this way. This is what the bill is going to read, and either vote yes so that we can pass this measure, or vote no, and it's a non-confidence motion because it has to do with the finance ministry, and then we're going to an election. I think it was there to start a discussion, not for a power grab.
Right? Like, if you want to have a discussion about something, you don't do it when you're trying to get it through as fast as possible. If you're trying to do a dialogue, you would go, okay, let's reach out to all the parties. Let's have a dialogue. Let's converse about this. They're trying to get through this as fast as possible. That's a power grab.
Well,
that's exactly what it is.
Okay, but I think again that in the grand scheme of things, when the bill was finalized, maybe the total delay in the process of the bill passing was about 12 hours. Okay, because there was extra time allotted to debate and discussion in the House in regards to how the bill was going to finally be worded. And then obviously there's some people that are like, the Liberals wasted time, and it's 12 hours more where people won't get their money. And it's like, well, it's not like the bill was going to pass and money was going to be flowing right away. The timeline for people getting money from the emergency response benefit and things like that is no different had they been able to go through first, second, and third reading in 20 minutes in comparison to 16 hours. I think if they had gone to the step of as it were committee discussions in regards to it before actually sitting in the House, that could have looked worse because it would look like the government was delaying the support. And so, because you could be talking about those conversations taking days instead of getting resolved in the House within 12 to 16 hours.
Yeah, but you're missing one key point. They should have never done it. Like, that's the thing. Like, if you're arguing from the standpoint of they wanted to bring it up. They should never done it. I've never seen a party backtrack so quickly on an issue.
Well, they didn't technically backtrack on it, though.
Yeah, they did. They proposed something and went, oh, wait, this is a bad idea. We're getting rid of it.
Okay,
That's exactly what they did.
But if you look at the final legislation, there's still something like that in the final legislation. It just expires in September. It doesn't expire in December of 2021. It expires in 6 months with the option to review it again at that time. There is a provision in the final bill that's still pretty close to what they had in there.
It's not the exact same. Let's pretend that what they proposed is now exactly the same way, because it's not. It's been changed.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to go in the weeds because I don't know all the weeds details, but it has been changed.
Yeah.
But we're talking about a 6 month change versus a
18 months or 21 months, really.
Yeah, 21 month change.
Yeah.
21 months is a little bit long.
Yeah, which is why I say I certainly don't agree with the whole, with the December 2021. It's like, that's like, we don't even know if the government's going to last that long anyways. Let's put it that way. When this is all over, I mean, the Conservatives are still going to have their leadership convention. And I think once the leadership convention happens, they're going to try and force an election as quickly as possible.
Well, here's the thing. Like, if they may not. Depends on who gets in.
I guess.
Okay, so let's pretend. And I want to give you this as a hypothetical scenario.
Sure.
Let's pretend that all of a sudden Jason Kenney decides to go and run for the PC leadership.
Yep.
Okay, he wins.
Yep.
Okay. He decided to have a snap election in September. They get the motion. Now, if the Liberals still had gotten what they originally proposed to go to December of 2021, as opposed to September, now Jason Kenney has the ability to control the healthcare spending however he wants to for 21 months. COVID-19's over.
Right.
Now, what are you going to do?
Yeah, there's pros and
cons. Do you still feel the same way that you did about Trudeau having it if Jason Kenney has it?
Okay, well, again, my point is that I agree that the pushing it for December of 2021, that part I understand that. That's not necessarily, or that's not acceptable. My point, though, was that rather than, like you said, where there's further discussions before the bill goes to even to first reading, there's not time for that. In this kind of a situation, there isn't time for it. So again, I mean, through negotiation in the House, because really, once they're in the House and they're going through reading and they're going through motions and voting and things like that, the process is in play. And they can and they did the negotiations on the fly. So, which is something we never see with government either, right? Like the fact that they were able to negotiate this stuff in the same day.
Yeah, they did good. Like, here's my point. They did good as far as negotiating. I believe, from what I understood of the what's been passed, it was good. It's that to rail against what the Liberals attempted to do is good for 24 hours.
Yeah.
Now the bill has been passed. Shut up. You want to talk about this 6 months from now when the climate's much different, or when COVID-19's under wraps? Go ahead. Go to your heart's desires, right? I don't have a problem with that at all because that's different. That's a different climate, right? Political climate that we're talking about. You get 24 hours, and when things are changing so drastically day by day, you get 24 hours, and that's it. And that's all they should be doing. Anything over 24 hours, you just shut your face.
Right.
Should they be railing against them? Yeah. You put a power play in there. You shouldn't have done it. That's why you retreated on it. It's that simple. And other people got onto it quickly, which is good. The Liberals went, oops. Maybe the Liberals made a mistake. That's fine too. As long as they were to admit it, but they never would.
No.
If they said, hey, we overstepped our bounds, we should definitely have not made it December 2021. Okay.
Maybe it was a typo.
Not a typo, but let's say they went on it for whatever reason. They thought it was a good idea. Like, I'm not questioning their intentions. Right. I do not believe that the power grab was meant as a power grab in their interpretation. I don't think that for 1 second.
Right.
I just don't like having that much power be given without accountability to anyone.
Right. Yeah, fair enough.
Right?
And I get that. And that's where I say the language in there about it going to December of 2021, it's like, well, that's too far because hopefully we'll be out of this by that point. And then it's like, well, you don't need those overreaching powers at that point, but you might need them for a little while, especially if you do end up in a situation where, let's say, you can't get a quorum in the House of Commons, and the quorum in the House of Commons is the 32 MPs, which is what they had. Anyways, I can kind of see it from both sides. I don't necessarily. Yeah. Anyways, here's the thing. When they're railing against you don't say the Liberals were trying to circumvent democracy, because I don't think they were. Like, I would never say, like, oh, Liberals are circumvent. No, they were trying to do something in the best interest of Canada by skipping steps to make it easier. Mm-hmm.
I get that, but it's too much power. Right. That's the problem. Like, right. You can't have that much power. Sorry, you just can't have that much power for that length of time. That's the issue. To say that they're circumventing democracy, come on, play it down a little bit, just a little bit right now, just a little bit. Right?
Come on, we're trying to work together here. We've been doing a pretty good job at working together.
Sure could, because, what does he care?
Okay.
Let him go ranty. I love how you go lame duck, and I'm just like, yeah, well, who cares? He's going to get fired. He's already fired anyway.
Already fired.
It's like if I know I'm going to get fired on, like, Friday, you think I care about what I do Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday?
Yeah, but the rest of the party might. Apparently they don't.
Well... marching orders sometimes.
That's the issue I have with some of and again, it's not like it's Andrew Scheer on his phone typing these tweets himself. Obviously, it's his team. Okay, he's got a staffer. That's what his or her responsibility is to type up the social media posts and stuff like that. But it's like okay, another case in point with politicizing this thing, using a social media platform to try and sway public opinion. And, saying that, oh, well, it's because of, and it's not just Andrew Scheer's account right now. It's also, like Pierre Poilievre and probably Michelle Rempel. And, it's just, it is now about this, what is it? The temporary wage subsidy. Okay. So they're saying, so now the Conservatives are coming out on social media and it's like, well, that was our idea. It's totally us that came up with that and told the government that they should change it from 10% to 75%. And, oh yeah, that was all us. That was all us, and the government decided to do it. And it's like you're trying to score cheap political points in the middle of a national crisis. A national crisis that we've never seen before, really. Again, you get 24 hours. I think that should be the rule. Like, you get 24 hours to say, hey, look, this is what I did. Well, okay. So it's been...
And then you're done. Yes. And then you don't get to reference it again.
Well,
right? Like,
I'm sure they'll keep referencing it. I'm sure they'll keep referencing it.
I'm not saying that they don't.
I know.
I'm saying that I will grace you because you are a politician. It is your job to be political. If you do something good, then you get to have 24 hours of saying something you've done good. And you don't make it a big victory. You don't be like, oh, look at me, look how good I am. You say, I negotiated with with the government to get 75% when they were originally posing 10%.
Right.
That's it. That's all you get to do.
Right. And I know when the 10% was announced, that at that point Denmark for sure, and I think possibly Germany, had already announced that they were going to do a 75% wage subsidy. You know, when I saw that, it's like, I know the clients that I deal with that have employees, 10% is not going to be enough for them to make the decision between keeping staff on or not. And also, by the time that even that 10% subsidy was announced, plenty of businesses were already laying people off. Mm-hmm. Right? So the 10%, it's like, it's good, it's not enough. So the fact that it went up to 75%, that's good. It's probably a little late, but I don't need the conservatives scoring cheap political points and being like, we're the ones that said to do that. It's totally us.
Yeah, you say negotiate it, not I did it. And you say work with as opposed to all me. And you get to do it for one day,
right?
Not 7.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
And if the liberals want to say, hey, our government passed this.
Yeah.
Great. Again, simple, one day. That's it. Don't talk to me about it for 4 days saying about what you've done great. I don't care about what you've done great. The climate's completely different. Now, I don't know what Trudeau has been addressing the country every day, so I don't think he just even has time to do that, to be honest.
Right.
He gets his prepared statements, and that's it. That's all he has time to do, because I'm sure he's busy as all get out right now.
Well, yeah.
Let alone.
Well, no, don't you know? He just goes back into Rideau Cottage and he does absolutely nothing all day, because that's what everybody. Because again, when his wife comes home from the UK and she starts exhibiting symptoms of COVID-19, and then as she tests positive, and it's like, well, she's in quarantine and we're in self-isolation for 14 days. Oh, well, it's not like he does any work anyways. He's just going to sit around the house and do nothing. It's like, really?
I know the mayor of our town personally.
Yeah.
And after him being a mayor for 2 years, I talked to him and I said, what do you know now that you didn't know before, basically? And he said, I didn't realize how much time this takes. I thought this job would be a 50, maybe 60-hour a week job. I'd be lucky if it's not 80 hours a week.
Yeah.
And he's a mayor.
Yeah.
So the idea that Justin Trudeau is not busy through the wazoo is insane. Just insane. Like, do you understand the burden that man's under right now? Like, can you fathom it? He has the weight of the country on his shoulders right now.
Yeah.
That's his responsibility.
And
what's yours?
And he's the one that comes out at 11:15 every day to tell you what the government's response is. He's being the prime minister.
The fact that he's not in a pool, like, crailing, like, going, I can't do this. I don't know what to do.
He just comes out to the podium and curls up in the fetal position.
Going off on politicians, like Trump does.
Yeah.
When they ask him a question, when they throw him his softball question, there's people that have fears about what's going on with Americans about these crises. What do you have to say to alleviate them of fears? He's giving you the easiest question, and you say, "Well, that's a crappy question, and you're just a crappy reporter."
You're a terrible journalist, and that's a nasty question. So I have a question for you. I was looking at the Worldometer website, okay, and I guess they added a column on there to show when the first case in a country was detected. Okay.
Okay.
So apparently the first case in Canada was January 24th. So I didn't even remember the fact that it was that early, but that was the first case in Canada, was January 24th. So now I guess as of the evening of the 27th of March, we've got about 4,700 confirmed cases in Canada. Confirmed, obviously, because we're also behind in testing by a lot. And this isn't coming from politicians per se. Maybe it did at some point, in some way, shape, or form, but just other people in general. And they're like, well, we should have closed the borders back in January when China really started showing issues, like serious issues. We should have closed the borders. Do you think anybody would have accepted that back in January, especially since we were still dealing with the Wet'suwet'en protests and the rail blockades?
Okay, here's the problem. Nobody at the time was talking to the right people about what to do. Right?
Okay.
And that's the problem. They weren't talking to the right people to know how to deal with this problem. And because nobody was talking to the right people, for the most part, you weren't getting answers you needed, right? Like they're saying, wash your hands, which was great. And honestly, people washing their hands and doing things like that has helped a lot. The problem is that like saying, oh, we should have done this. Like, stop playing Monday morning quarterback. There's no way. Yeah, it would have been great. Yeah, if the same outbreak happens again, I can guarantee you we're going to handle it differently, right? Yeah. Like Canada in particular. But, if you look at, like, there's all these things about flattening the curve and everything like that, and you really have to be almost a statistics, or really and truly be passionate about statistics to figure out what is going on, right? Because one of the big important details that you need to realize is the number of newly reported daily cases going up, down, or staying the same.
Right.
And right now in Canada, they've been averaging...
It's still kind of going up, right?
From the 23rd to the 27th, it's between 600 and 700.
Right.
And a fluctuation. And like, I would consider without running models on it, I would say within a degree of margin, within the margin of error. So I think that for Canada, it's pretty much level, right? For new cases. Now, if you look at the total number of cases, yeah, it's going up. But the total number of cases is not what's as important. It's the number of new cases, right? Because that lets you know whether or not the disease is spreading, or to the degree of which it's spreading, right? The rate.
Yep.
Now, if you were to look at the US, it's going up almost the exact same. Like, if you look at March 23rd, they were at 10,000. By March 27th, they're at 18,000 new cases per day. And it's like, you can see the curve on that.
Yeah, exactly.
And,
yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
Right? Like, and that's the one you have to really look at. There's a really good math guy on YouTube. I think it's 3 brown, 1 blue. Yeah. Because that's his eye color. That's why he does it that way. But he does fantastic probability models and all things like that. And it makes sense. And the thing is that to flatten curves, you have to get the daily average to either be the same or to go down. Once it starts going down, you're in great shape. Yeah. Until it starts going down, you're in really bad shape. The thing about the Americans, the worst is yet to come.
Oh, yeah.
Hopefully, even with the lag that we have, right? And we have a lag on our reporting cases right now.
Yep.
Even with the lag on our reporting of cases, we're kind of level, right?
Yeah.
Like we're not going up a lot, and we're definitely not going down. But if you look at, for instance, Italy, where one of the big epicenters are, they've been averaging between 5,000 and 6,000, and they're kind of leveling off. But they didn't start leveling off until March 19th.
Yeah, and they were already almost 3 weeks into it. And you have to think they've been locked down since the 8th or 9th of March, I think. Yeah, that's the kind of thing where you're like, wow, what are we gonna do, right? And who's been the best? Oh, South Korea. So if you look at the daily cases for South Korea, right? They peaked essentially for daily cases at 900 on March 3rd. Yep.
Ever since then, they're down to like 100 new cases per day.
Yep.
So as a result, you can see the total number of cases, it peaks at a certain point and then flattens out. And that's what you want to see. So it's the daily cases that you really need to be concerned about, right? Because you're always going to have new cases. Right now, there's always going to be new cases. So I care about the daily new cases more than I care about any other number. That's the one I'm following.
Yep.
The rest of them, who cares, right? Like, if the number of new cases is not going up, it's just staying flat. Okay, we've done good. We still have a long ways to go, but we've done good. We've nipped it. And if it starts going down, great. Whatever we're doing, we need to keep it going. And the reality is, until we get a vaccine, until we get some other way of preventing it, it can repopulate with vengeance. It can have second, third, fourth waves if we don't do something about it.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I misjudged, and I didn't realize, was the rate of infection is much higher for COVID-19 than it was for SARS. And I didn't realize that.
I think maybe at the time when we talked about it, it might not have been, though.
Oh, no. My information was poor.
Okay.
Because we didn't know, right? Like, there was nobody talking about it, which is, again, this is the kind of thing where they weren't talking to people that were specializing in it. So if you would have talked to somebody that was specializing, they would have been like, okay, what is the rate of recovery? What is the rate of mortality? What is the rate of contagiousness? Like, all that stuff. if they would have addressed those concerns, we might have much different conversations.
Mm-hmm.
But they weren't. They were talking about what's going to happen in the stock market.
Yeah. Well,
everyone is going to die.
The stock market is the lifeblood of the world, don't you know?
And yet somehow I still have food.
Food's nice. So there was one other thing that came up. I saw it because it came up on Twitter yesterday, so on the 27th of March. So now it's about getting people home.
Oh yeah, that big thing about getting people home.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
I've seen a few things about that.
Yeah, so it's and I understand. You want to get people home here because we can potentially monitor them better here, depending on where they are. The healthcare system here is probably better and things like that. Like, I get that. I don't have a problem with getting people home either. But I feel like to rail on the government to say, well, they're not doing enough, it's like there's a limit to what the government can do in this situation, and they're relying on the commercial airliners to have the capacity to do this, when those commercial airliners are obviously have next to no revenue right now, have already laid off thousands upon thousands of people, and so are working at basically skeleton crew. And countries are shutting down their borders and their airspace and things like that, and it takes time to negotiate those kinds of agreements with other countries. Like, what is it? Just in this past week, we've had flights to Morocco and Peru and one other country, and that's basically it. And those are countries that had closed their borders, and it took some time to negotiate sending flights there to get these people home. There's still the diplomatic process in all of this.
Yeah, you just look at the situation with China. And I remember there was one person that had a big problem with, because of how China recognizes its borders and its visas. It's not like you can be dual citizenship for China. Like, right. That just, yep. China doesn't, that's not a thing for them.
No.
So that kind of demographic plays out all over the place. So it's not as cut and dry as, well, we have planes, let's just go send them. Okay. What happens if they say, no, you can't land?
Yeah.
Like, is this a process that some people understand? Like, it's not like the borders are open. It'd be like if I said, okay, I'm going to Adam's house to podcast. What happens if he doesn't open his door?
What happens if I'm not home?
Well,
I know. Yes, I know. I'd have to be home in the situation.
Right? If they're not willing to open the door, if they're not willing to open their borders, if they're not willing to accept us landing there, it doesn't matter if we send the plane or not. And then how much is it going to cost to send that plane? Factor all those costs involved. So it's not just as simply as saying, hey, we're going to go fly somewhere. Because guess what? Now everyone's going to open up their arms, especially if there's places where the borders are closed. And my opinion on this is, what rock are you living under that you didn't know that this was coming?
This is like the fact that, the people coming back, let's say from down south, and they come across the border by car, and they're given the information that they have to self-isolate at the border, and they've probably been hearing, there's no way that they've been that ignorant of everything that's going on while they've been away, that they have no idea that when they get back home, they're supposed to self-isolate for 14 days. At some point, somewhere, they've seen that information, probably before they left to come home. And there were still people that would get back and they still went shopping, because it's like, well, we just got home, we need groceries. It's like, no, you don't understand. You're back in the country. You are going to your house, and you are going to get someone else who has been in the country for more than 14 days to go get your groceries for you.
Yeah.
The information's available. People, like, since this started, and the flights were getting limited, and then they were getting shut down, and then the shutdown with the U.S. border and things like that. Throughout this whole process, there's been so many people complaining about, they're not telling us anything at the airports. There's no information at the airports. There's no information at the border. There's no, we're not being told what to do. And it's like, are you not paying attention to anything?
I could understand that you're not being told necessarily by border agents or airports, but that's not their responsibility. They're not responsible for making sure you get home because of international diplomatic relations. If you are abroad, you should know. Like I was mentioning about the people that Steph works with, that they went away on vacation, and I was like, they're shutting down the borders. You need to get home, right? Like that was my attitude. Like when I first heard that they were shutting down the borders, I was like, you need to reach out to those people and tell them they need to get home. Because if they shut down the borders tomorrow, because this has been changing very rapidly.
Yeah.
If they shut down the borders tomorrow, then you're stuck. Now, the argument could be made, and I'm not necessarily disagreeing with it, that shutting the borders down now is too late.
It's too late.
But you're not doing.
Yeah.
How much are you really doing? You're not. Because
I mean, here's what I would say though, that closing the border is similar to telling people to stay in their homes, right? You have a better chance of flattening the curve sooner if you don't have free flowing traffic across the border. That's what I would say.
Free flowing, yeah. I say closing the border. I'm not saying restricting the border. Okay, restricting border compared to free flowing, there is a difference, and 100% I'll agree with you there. But closing the border, no, you're not doing anything unless you're in a situation where you can guarantee with 100% that no one has the virus.
Yeah.
The infection is so prevalent now that closing the borders isn't going to do it. It's too late.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But at the same point in time, restricting, yeah. But trying to waste diplomatic and Canadian resources to try and get people that aren't in Canada back home. I'm sorry, I'm not as sympathetic towards international travel as other people are.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to put it to you that simply. Yep. Like, if you decide to take your vacations in Mexico, you're not spending money in Canada, you're spending in Mexico. If you get stuck in Mexico, I'm sorry, but I would rather see somebody in Canada get help before you get helped. You chose to go to Mexico. Yeah. No one forced you to go to Mexico.
Yeah.
Right?
That was where you chose to spend your money.
Right? And like, we're now in a money crunch. Yeah, I know we're throwing our money like it's nobody's business, and we should, but we should still be fiscally responsible. If you're in Mexico and you're in a situation where you can still function, for lack of a better purpose, I'm not talking about travelers, a little bit different, because they're kind of, well, I have no more money and I have no place to stay. Okay, I can understand that. But foreign nationals, I'm sorry, you chose to work somewhere else.
Yeah.
You have a place, stay there. Why is there a sense of urgency for you to come back to Canada? You want to work in Peru for whatever reason. Maybe it's for prospecting of oil. Right?
Maybe.
Okay. Maybe. That's your choice. So you either should be more aware of what's going on and what could potentially go on, or you stay there and you try to make things do as best they can. Because it's not like all of a sudden you come back to Canada and all of a sudden there's things are going to be so much better. They may be, but I'm not willing to sacrifice my resources, which are limited, to get you back because you decided that you now want to come back to Canada because we have great healthcare.
Okay. Last point.
Yep.
This week, economists started predicting that the budget deficit for the 2020-2021 year, as it stands right now at least, the projection for the deficit is $113 billion, which will be the largest deficit ever by dollar amount. It is also, I believe it would also be the largest deficit even when you account for inflation on any previous years. So I guess let's assume that this is all over in 6 months, because we don't know. But let's say 6 months' time, this is all over. Maybe there's 10 new cases a day across the world. Okay. Like, it's so small that it's essentially taken care of. Vaccine's not there yet, but there's basically so few cases that it's not a concern. 6 months from now, did the other political parties start politicizing the deficit? And should they?
Not the deficit was concerned as a result. The deficit beforehand 110%.
Okay.
So if they want to say the $82 billion, whatever the package amount is that they're going to have to spend, they say, you know something, we're going to kind of exclude the government for it. And by kind of exclude, I want to make sure I phrase it correctly. You need to spend $82 billion. The problem is that you've already spent when you didn't need to, and now we're even worse off. See, that if they don't leverage the 82, they leverage the other part of it, but because they had no room to give, they're that much worse off. 100%. Go ahead, go down. If they try to use the $82 billion and say you spent too much on the crisis, I'm not going to be behind it at any way, shape, or form. And that'll be the difference. Now, whether or not they do, no, because they're going to say it's $112 billion deficit and rail like that. It's like, no.
Never mind the fact that the support package is factored into that number, right?
Yeah. Like if I was a politician, which I probably never will be, hard pass. With the exception that we're a dual-headed monster under the Rhino Party.
That's right.
I would say, this $30 billion the government spent that they shouldn't have spent, that's my issue. That's what the problem is. You get rid of that $30 billion because you shouldn't have spent it. What were you doing, right? Like you ran a deficit. For what reason?
Right.
You didn't need to run it. You chose to run it to run subsidies, which I hate, to run your different programs. I don't have any problems with welfare. I have problems with corporate welfare. There's a difference.
Yep.
Some point in time, I'll talk about UBI. One point in time, we will talk about a UBI.
Oh,
but that'll be it.
I think that'll come up soon. I think universal basic income will come up soon.
I do as well. I really do. Right? You can rally against the government for deficit, but like any measures we take right now, everyone gets a pass.
Yeah.
Everyone gets a pass.
Yeah.
6 months from now, everyone's got a pass. If the conservative government over politicized it for 2 days and they should have only done it for one, I'll give them a pass, whatever. I don't care. Let's start from scratch. I really hope that everyone says, okay, scratch. We'll scratch it off. Everything, we did what we could. We did the best job we could. On the circumstances, no one could realistically do any better. Obviously, hindsight's great, but we don't have that. We did what we could. Great. Fantastic.
But if the crisis...
That's not going to happen.
I was going to say, if the crisis is over and the conservatives have their leadership convention and they force an election as quickly as they can, and they start campaigning on, well, the liberals are running a $115 billion deficit or whatever it's going to end up being.
But they're going to.
I know they are.
That's reality.
I know.
Right?
I'm throwing it out there, though.
The same thing. And the Liberal government in Ontario should do the same thing to the progressive Conservative government in Ontario. They are all going to do it.
Yeah. And I don't. Yeah, exactly. And if the Liberals and the NDP do it in Ontario the same way, then that's not right either. If they kind of point at the fact that, they ran in the last election on eliminating that deficit, and before the crisis came on, they actually made the deficit worse.
Again,
that would be something.
You can, if they want to rally on that, you can rally on that. But everything basically from now until the crisis has abated, everyone gets a pass, provided they stay on the same course that they're doing now. And right now, almost all Canadian politicians, Jason Canning accepted, are...
Don't forget Shandro.
Who?
Tyler Shandro. That was one I wanted to get to, but I don't think we have time.
Who's Tyler Shandro?
He's the Minister of Health in Alberta.
Oh, whatever.
No. Trust me. Look up some of the stuff about him in the last couple of days, and you'll understand what I'm talking about.
Let's just say we'll go anybody from UCP.
Okay. Fair enough.
Exception, the UCP exception, we'll call it, has all done the same thing. Okay, this is a crisis. We're new to this. We're going to work together, try to do as many things as possible that make sense, and we're going to refer to the experts, and we're going to try to give you as much information as we can, as often as we can. And everyone's been doing it, except the UCP. Ford, who should have been more along the UCP guidelines, he had a small caucus, as small as possible, to pass emergency bill, and it's been going, okay, calm, cool, collected, praising media organizations, doing all the right things in this state of crisis.
Yeah.
Trudeau, same thing. The guys look almost identical as far as their talking points, their statements, and everything like that. And that's great. Awesome. That's why I'm saying everyone's going to pass. Like, who cares? Just everyone gets a pass. Except the UCP.
Except the UCP.
Except the UCP. Look at it. Yeah. Yep. They're just a whole wall of, oh my God, what are you doing?
3 more years, Alberta.
Like,
3 more years. 3 more
Alberta
years.
is in the worst spot of this. They are getting railed. Yep. What are you doing, UCP? You should be like, we know it's bad. We're going to do everything we can to help you out. Instead,
full steam ahead, boys. Full steam ahead.
Let's just go right off the cliff. Like, let's not hit brakes. Throttle it up. I
mean,
they should start
trains don't stop, man. Trains don't stop.
They should start building the pipeline to BC. And just stop it right there.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, why not? I'd be like, well, we built our portion.
Why aren't you guys building the rest?
Why'd you build the rest?
Oh,
man. Trudeau? What'd you do? Well, probably because you gave those tax breaks to Quebec.
All right. Well, anyways. Good talk, man.
Right?
Well, that's been our... I mean, like I said, I started it off as saying it might be a bit of a rant, but you know what? It was good. It was good conversation and debate.
Yes.
Okay. So, anyways, not too ranty, I guess, but there was some in there. Anyways, so this has been Politicizing a Pandemic from Poutine Politics. That's a lot of alliteration. My name's Adam.
I'm Beck.
We'll talk to you soon.